Hello, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. Very excited to bring back Michael France today, who's no stranger to this podcast. He's been on with us before. Michael's been writing with us for I think it's just over a year. Is that correct, Michael?
Correct. It's been about
All
a
right.
year now.
Yeah, and done a phenomenal job. Very proud of him. But he had a piece that published at noon Eastern, 1 a.m. 9 a.m. Pacific earlier today. That was an exceptional piece of journalism. It wasn't just a good piece, and he's a good writer. It was an exceptional piece. It's a piece that I can tell you the seeds for this piece were planted probably 9 months ago, 10 months ago, when he wrote a piece going back looking at first round success in the NFL draft, but he ruminated on it. And then just before the NFL Combine this year, he began to talk to me about some of his theories and things he was developing. And so I told him at the NFL Combine that he needed to, when he had a chance to talk to coaches, general managers at the Combine, to get information for this article. And then what really cemented to me that he needed to write it was a brilliant statement that he made that we're going to get to later. It was his. It was the first person I've ever heard use this verbiage. I've heard others express the thought process, but nobody as succinctly and as well as he did. In fact, I've passed it on to several people and credited it to him. But we're going to dig in today. And so today's podcast is really a deep dive into how to win at the NFL draft from a Las Vegas Raiders perspective. But in fairness, it's for any NFL team. But I think you all, because everybody right now is interested in the draft. So this is a must-see podcast. Very excited to bring Michael in. Michael, congratulations on what I will call nothing short but a great piece of journalism. You deserve absolutely all the credit in the world. You ruminated this. You wrote it. I mean, you asked for a couple pieces of thought, but this was all Michael France. There's nobody deserves any credit other than you. Great piece of journalism, and congratulations.
I appreciate it very much. I'm ready to get into it.
All right, so let's talk 355 offensive and defensive contributors in the 2024 NFL playoffs that shaped out by position. You took the time. This was not an article written in an afternoon. It was not written in a week. This took months. But you looked at all 355 offensive and defensive contributors in the playoffs, and you found some fascinating trends. Would you talk about those, please?
Yeah, I will. So, to look at the best drafting teams in the NFL, you needed a bigger sample size than just a handful. So, what better way to do it than look at all 14 teams that made the most recent playoffs? So you take it, and I knew it couldn't just be starters, right? Because the football is so fluid now. I mean, with schemes, offensively, defensively, starters is just as a term. I just feel like that was really reductive and wouldn't really tell the story because it's so rotational now. So I look at, you go through every position and using Pro Football Reference, you go through every position. You look at the top. I just looked at the top snap getters, percentage of every team snaps, offensive, defensively, and that's where I came up with the 355 players on offense and defense. Now, where it got to be so big was a lot of the defensive positions, with cornerbacks and safeties, with disguises. And I even write it in the story. You need a fine tooth comb to find out who's really, I guess, as you could say, is the hard label of a safety, a nickel, a cornerback for a given play because everyone has so many roles. And like I said, it's so rotational. So I typically took, the top 4 or 5 cornerbacks or defensive backs, and then you take the top 1 or 2 safeties for off-ball linebackers, for example. It's not just a 4-3 or 3-4 defense anymore. Sometimes there's just 2 off-ball true middle linebackers. Sometimes there's 3. So I typically went with the top 2 or 3 snap getting linebackers on all these teams. Interiors, you see interior defensive linemen rotate in and out. I almost liken it to hockey, right? Like you always get fresh legs out there. And a lot of it's sometimes situational and down base. Now that's the same with defensive backs, of course, and linebackers. So I had to really look deep at the top two, three, four snap getters for those defensive positions, and that's what helped really blow up. For offensive tackles, it was easy. It's easy to find out which are the top two starting tackles. The interior gets jumbled up because some guys, you see it like with the Jackson Powers Johnson. If it's needed, he will play a few games, get a bunch of snaps at center or guard. And that's how it is with the league and injuries and just with how deep interior is and how versatile and athletic these players are now. And you have to ask so much of them. So for the interiors, I just knew, okay, the top three snap getting interior offensive linemen, we'll call it good there. Quarterbacks was easy. I mean, it's easy to determine who the top contributors are at quarterback for these teams. I took the top running back for each team. So, a two running back team like the Detroit Lions, I took Jahmyr Gibbs. He had the most carries. For wide receivers, I took the top three receivers. I took the number one tight end. And edge rushers was another number that it varied because some teams have a whole bevy of them, and some are pretty solid with their two that they use as every down snap. So and then you get the number. So I came to 355 contributors from offense and defense for all 14 teams, and I didn't want to look at where these guys, what team originally drafted them. I didn't want to look at how they got to that specific team for the 2024 playoffs. It was, how did they get in the league? Where was every single player drafted? You assign a round and a value to all these players, and it really tells you that every pick is valuable, which, is obviously true. But then you look at, where's the foundation? Where's the crux of all these teams being built from? So 355 players, 94 of them were first round picks. And then you got 78 second round picks, 67 third round picks, 41 fourth round picks, 25 fifth round picks, 15 sixth round picks, 9 seventh round picks, and then 25 undrafted free agents. So you see almost a U of a curve. It kind of goes down and then comes back up again with the undrafted free agents. And I think that's a real big sign of value. And you go ahead.
No, I want you to finish, and then I'm going to say something. Please finish.
Yeah, and with the I was thinking about the undrafted free agents even to this morning, and it just makes sense. You see the undrafted free agents go up more because they're essentially those fringe sixth and seventh round guys that it's kind of I don't want to say it's a coin flip. That'd be reducing the entire process and the hard work NFL teams do. But, they're really on the fence guys. And when you take the 15 sixth round picks and you add up the 9 seventh round picks, you get 24. That's almost 24 from the last two rounds to the 25 undrafted free agents.
Yeah, that to me is when I was reading your article, there were in this section of the article, I thought the whole thing was brilliant. I know I've told you this, that's like the 10th time, but it was brilliant. So there's the 12th. But the thing that stood out to me was two things. I have said this for years. The best drafting teams have said to me, you can't miss in the first round. They're too valuable. And your research proved the point. But then the second point of your research that I loved was that, you plan on your top 5 round guys making your team. You hope your 6th or 7th make the practice squad and work their way on. But the point of the matter is when you start getting into 6 and 7, it's a fine hair between that and a UDFA. And we saw in the career of Brian Hoyer, being a UDFA is almost better than being a 6th or 7th round pick, because then you get to pick the situation you go to. I'd like you to address, first of all, the first round comment. I mean, you cannot miss, and the best teams don't miss in the first round, do they, Michael?
No, and bare minimum, all these playoff teams, bare minimum, they don't miss in the first, and they typically don't miss in the second. Right. So, and where I see that is I see the value. I mean, we all know the modern draft, some people, for example, Ashton Genty, generational running back coming out in the draft, he's getting a lot of people to really think with the resurgence of the running back in 2024. Okay, are we comfortable again drafting running backs in the top 10? Well, first of all, you got to get best player available no matter what. And I found that these playoff teams, the value of position was very interesting. So 12 of the 14 starting quarterbacks were first round picks. I mean, that's going to be a given. You're not going to find
No,
a
wait, I
Tom
want to
Brady's
repeat that. I want you to repeat that because I don't think people heard what you said because it's very important. Tell them again what you just said.
12 of the 14 starting quarterbacks in the playoffs were first round quarterbacks.
All right, I want to stop you right there because you have so much. We're going to get into all of it. So I'm talking to a GM the other day who says to me, Shedeur Sanders may be a franchise quarterback. Now, this is a GM who has a proven track record of picking quarterbacks who take his team to playoff wins. Okay, proven track record. And he says to me, but there are too many things about him that to me, he's a gamble in the first round. And he said, I think the kid could be great, and I would pick him in the second or third round. He said, but here is the problem. He's going to get picked in the first round. And if he pans out, everybody's going to use that as an excuse, but not talk about the 10 guys who fail who shouldn't have been. And the guy said this to me, Michael. He said, the reason my team is always in the playoffs is because I don't gamble. And for every Shedeur I let go, I let 10 Ryan Leafs go. And so I may miss on one, but I hit on all 11. I thought that was a brilliant point. I'd love your analysis of that.
Well, and that goes to show you drafting, and especially the quarterback position, because it is so cerebral and there's so many intangibles and so much goes into quarterback position than anything else. Um, it's such a fine-tooth comb picking out these guys, and some of it's value, and there are going to be quarterbacks because of that value, and because you never know when they could go off the board. They're going to go early in the first round when maybe they don't deserve to, or maybe guys are going to slip through the cracks after the first round because teams are too gun shy about it. So yeah, it's really close, and it's a hair between a boom and a bust sometimes with these quarterbacks.
That to me, Michael, as I read your piece, and it just reaffirmed everything I believe about the draft. It was so done well. But again, good teams don't waste first round picks. They just don't gamble. I cut and pasted your article before it published, and I sent it to a friend of mine who's an NFL executive. And I said, what do you think of this? And his exact words were, that is brilliant. In fact, he said, when it publishes, I'm going to send it to a bunch of my friends. That's how well it was received. And this is a GM who told me when Jalen Carter came out, he said, Jalen Carter is the most talented player in this draft. But Jalen Carter comes with enough red flags that somebody's going to pick him, and I hope Jalen does well. And he goes, but you can't judge him till after 3 years. And if he does well, the next Jalen that comes, everyone says, ignore the red flags, get the guy. He goes, but 10 out of 11 of those guys fail. And he goes, you can't take those risks in the first round. To me, this hammered that point. Same way, second round. Okay, there's guys I'll take a risk in the second. I won't in the first, but I'm not taking a risk on a third guy in the second. It's the value of those picks. Now, talk about the fact that 6 and 7 are really, there's more UDFAs than them. Would you dig into that? I think that's brilliant on your part as well.
Well, I think it's also, and you made a really good point. UDFA, you got to emphasize the FA. They are free agents. They pick where they want to go. So some of it, you feel me, these guys know enough to pick the best situation to get on these playoff teams and contribute. And obviously they're good enough to contribute, and you got to have that talent and that ability. But it's the fact that they can find these places and take them, and there's no pressure, and they can come in and really show off through special teams, and then eventually get. Obviously, this was a focus on offensive and defensive contributors, and that's how you get to that. And find the finest of lines with the sixth and seventh rounds. I mean, you get a Tom Brady in the sixth round at 199. You get a Julian Edelman in the seventh round, right? But you can very well. Maybe not a Tom Brady typically as a UDFA, although Kirk Cousins, Tony Romo, but pretty. I mean, not Kirk Cousins, Kurt Warner, and Tony Romo were pretty good quarterbacks at UDFA. Obviously, not Tom Brady's. And then hey, 25 UDFA's were contributed, basically starting level players on playoff teams, and just 24 were combined sixth and seventh round. And that just goes to show you it's this close. It's this close. But the talent is there, and and it's all about these teams being able to find it and not taking risks.
Another part of your article, and I'm going to be honest, I didn't expect you to do this. So you sideswept your boss in a good way. I mean that as a compliment to you. That's not a negative. Is you dug into the who and where. And I remember as I was reading the top of your article, I thought, you know what? I'm going to suggest to him for his next article. And then boom, you went into right. That is, it speaks to your talent level. Let's dig into the who and where.
So what really stood out to me was the amount of, the positional value. We talk about who and where. I mean, you got 16 out of 38 edge rushers in the first round. And that was something I completely expected, right? I mean, a majority of edge rushers in the first round, because that's the premium now. It's the Al Davis quarterback needs to go down hard. You got to pressure the quarterback. Pass rushers are everything in the modern NFL. So edge rushers was huge. And then you see a premium on offensive tackles. Offensive tackles are everything. They're going up against those edge rushers, and they're some of the smartest players on the team too. 13 of 28 offensive tackles were in the first round, and then the next highest number was in the second round. And it's like you see this upward trend where these premium positions typically were in the first two rounds, first three rounds. The earlier they're going to go, right? Because one, it's the value. You want to draft that. Teams are going to typically draft that high, and we'll get to that with the Bill Polian section. But it's also, that's where you can find the high end talent. That's what you need. And then you get down to the other positions and you see this in the draft, and this made complete sense to me when I found these numbers. I was like, that's what I would have guessed it to be, is like interior, defensive tackles. Think about how many Mason Grahams you've seen come out in the last few years, right? Getting a top 10 label, not many. So first round picks, there's 39 interior defenders in my study. Only 8 of them are first round picks, right? And then the majority of them are actually third round. And then you go to tight ends. Just one tight end, number one in the playoffs, was a first round pick, and that was Minnesota Vikings TJ Hockenson, right? And he's not Brock Bowers. We can say that probably. I mean, with just the ceiling of Brock Bowers, we kind of know that after just 1 year. But that just goes to show you. I mean, the majority of tight ends were taken in the third and fourth round. And I just thought that was really incredible to see. And maybe that value will go up as more Travis Kelce's and Brock Bowers, and the proliferation of these pass catching tight ends. Although Brock Bowers is almost his own breed because he can bring the blocking part of it, right? So we're seeing that with the physicality. 7 of 42 first round picks were interior offense. 7 of 42 interior offensive linemen were first round picks. I mean, that's a quarter of interior offensive linemen went in the first round, and right away, Jackson Powers Johnson. Maybe a long time ago, when offensive, especially interior offensive linemen were valued higher, he goes in the first round. But Jackson Powers Johnson falls to the second round. And many would have told you how good he was. Tampa Bay Buccaneers also had a great rookie interior offensive line, Graham Barton, really good player. And then, and this last bit is really telling about where we are defensively with position value and where these good drafting teams are considering the talent and where they and how they know they can get it. We can get this in the second, third, or fourth round. We can find maybe not an equivalent, but we can find very good value later on. Focus on more high value positions in the earlier rounds. It's just 7 of 42 off the ball, true middle off the ball linebackers were first round picks. That's a quarter. And then 4 of 28 safeties were first round picks. And then it goes to show you, I mean, there's only, I think, one safety in this year's draft that's getting considered a first round pick, and that's Malachi Starks out of Georgia. Everyone else is considered second round on.
So I think you probably heard, because my for having been with me, my tone of my phone when I get a text. I got a text while you were talking there, and I had asked the gentleman that I cut and pasted your article to this question: does this article cement in your mind BPA or need when it comes to draft? This is what he said. I thought Michael made the complete argument about BPA. If you have tight ends that are not first round worthy, then wait and pick them where they are worthy. But the secret is knowing if there's nobody there worth a 1, trade down. If there's nobody there worth a 2, trade down. I think this article proves even more BPA, not need, understanding value and picking with value. Do you agree with him or do you disagree?
I do agree, and I'm no expert, I'm no executive, but I feel
No, but wait a minute. I am not going to let you discredit yourself when you're right. You're not an executive. You're right. You're not paid millions to make these draft picks, but you spent the hours of research and the numbers don't lie. And so I'm not going to discredit. You're right. You're not those, but you're a hell of a journalist that did your job. And now you're looking at the data. Listen, I don't know. I'm fat. I don't know how to cook, but I can tell you a good meal and a bad meal. Okay. I'm an expert there. Just look at my waistline. You've done your research, so I'm not going to let you discredit yourself. You've done your research. That's a successful executive right there that says your research tells him BPA every single time. Do you agree with his analysis of your work?
I do. I do. You got to have the best player available for your value, what you are looking for. There has to still be other elements, fit your culture. See what you want in your locker room. You have to be a guardian of your locker room. We see this with the Lions. In fact, at the combine, I was there when Brad Holmes said in the Detroit Lions, and I point them out several times in the story. They're one of the best drafting teams now that they have Campbell and Holmes running things in the NFL. Holmes said, "We are not a needs-based drafting team. We look at the best possible player. Who's the best there for us, right?" And then Eric DaCosta had a big section in the story for the Ravens, and everyone can agree. Ever since the conception of the Ravens in 1996, they've been an incredible expansion franchise, and it's because they draft. They are from the beginning in 1996. They've been a great drafting franchise, and that's how they've been so sustained. Eric DaCosta said, needs change day to day. You could be good at a position, but back to back games, everyone keeps tearing ACLs or Achilles. Well, now it's a need. And he gave the incredible anecdote that I dug in on research wise. 2021, they lost their top 3 running backs all before the season started. And he said, literally Friday before week 1 or week 2, we're literally calling agents like, we need to get someone in here. And they had 2 running backs who were, pretty high end at that time, coming off of successful rookie seasons, young backs. They thought they were good, but goes to show you, needs change. So get the best player available.
Well, I'll give you an example. The Eagles love Abdul Carter and they love Jalen Walker. They love them. Neither one of those is a position of need. And if either guy falls, and I'm not even talking about falls into the tens, if they fall in that 6 to 9 range, I would not be shocked if Philly says, listen, they're so valuable, we're going to trade up and go get them. I would not be shocked at all. All right, this segues, though, to the next point in your article where you really dug in with need and upside. I thought this was really, really good. And dig into your theory, not really a theory because you did the research. Dig into what you found when it came to need versus upside.
Well, it was everything with DaCosta, and needs change day to day. Okay, I mean, and I talk about this, and you see this all the time with the mock drafts and the draft guides and all this stuff that the great Joel Bucksbaum started and Rick Gosselin helped perfect and all this stuff. But you see the position needs, and a team might they'll list them as safety, wide receiver. They need an offensive tackle. Well, what they need is good players. Everyone needs good players. That's the one universal thing, and you get upside that player, you could, and you mentioned it with Philly, right? They're essentially a Death Star right now, put it in Star Wars terms. But hey, if they want to add a front porch, they can add a front porch. Nothing's perfect. You can always have. There's no such thing as too many weapons. You get a solid edge rusher, and then that's a rookie deal. If the upside is there, if the value is there, yeah, you got a new edge rusher. You expect him to pop, so that's a bygone conclusion for this. What I'm saying here, and now and I didn't touch on this in the story, but there's so much more behind also what good drafting means, because now you're not drafting just for that player's performance. You're drafting because now you can sell. You can have players as trade pieces. You have so much control with contracts, salary cap. They're on a rookie deal for 4 or 5 years, and then you can trade if that position is stocked and you add this top of the line player. But now you got four, and we just maybe want three so we can have two solids and a rotational guy. Well, now you can look to shop that fourth and get more draft capital. It all comes back into itself, and it's all cyclical. And once again, I'm going to harp on this because Eric DaCosta killed it with the Ravens when he said this. Needs change day to day. Look at the Lions. Look at the Raiders. Position groups they thought were solid on defense, ravaged by mid-season, and now you're like, oh my lord. I mean, the Detroit Lions going into the draft last year knew they wanted defensive backs and corners. That was probably their one true glaring weakness. They get them. And then, wow, our cornerbacks room is looking really good going into the season. And then, bam, you're starting second string guys all over again because injured. It's, the NFL is it's a week to week, day to day league, and things change fast in a blink of an eye. Got to go upside, best player.
Now, you did something that I thought was really wise. Bill Polian, in my opinion, is one of the best drafters in the history of the National Football League. He's an iconic NFL figure. I think he's one of the most underrated figures in NFL history. If I were an owner, I don't know that I would bring him in as my GM, but I would bring him in probably as my president of football operations, because that guy's forgotten more about football than most general managers will ever know in a lifetime. He was on this podcast last year, literally crushed it. And you went back and revisited the gospel according to Tony Dungy per Bill Polian. Talk about that, if you would, please. And then I would encourage all of you, when you're done watching this podcast, go back and find that, or go find Mike's article. The link is in there to when Bill was on with me. It was phenomenal. But talk about that, would you please? Oh, did you hear that again? That's probably another text about your article. Go ahead.
Thank you. So, Bill Polian stated this, and when I heard this, the gospel according to Tony Dungy, I thought this was genius. And I went back and I looked at my numbers, and I'll be danged if it didn't confirm it. So Bill Polian said, if you have a top 10 pick, and I think this is going to go for the Raiders. If you have a top 10 pick, there's a prototypical player that warrants a top 10 pick. There are 5 of them. And if you don't have any of these 5 that you want or that are available or that you can take, trade out. Don't take the risk. Minimize risk. So the 5 are a quarterback that can win. Checks all the boxes: height, weight, speed, arm strength, intangibles, ability to process the game. That's worth a top 10 pick. A guy that sacks a quarterback. So for now, it's obviously going to be your edge rushers. A Max Crosby, A Abdul Carter, right? A guy that sacks the quarterback. That's number 2. Number 3, someone who scores touchdowns. A top of the line, checks all the boxes, running back or wide receiver. Number 4, someone who turns the ball over. For the most part, he mentioned middle linebackers, but based on the draft value, I stuck with what he said about defensive backs, warranting a top 10 pick, that is. Number 5, a left tackle. But as he notes, nowadays, they're so valuable, right tackles. Think about Penei Sewell, the Detroit Lions. They're so hard to come by. Good tackles are so hard to come by. So right or left. So those are the 5. A quarterback that can win, a guy that sacks the quarterback, someone who scores touchdowns, running backs or wide receivers, someone who turns the ball over, or a left tackle, right tackle. So I took what he said, and I went back and I looked at all my research, all my numbers. Of the 94 first-round picks, the 355 players, 94 were first-round picks. 13% of them, 12 of them were quarterbacks. 17% of those 94 first-round picks were edge rushers. 16% was a total of 15 running backs, wide receivers combined. 16% of the 94 first-round picks were defensive backs, and 14% of the 94 first-round picks were tackles. Combined everything else, tight end, linebacker, defensive interiors, interior offensive linemen, they only combined, all of those groups combined, 26% of first-round picks. And that's just first-round picks. That's not even top 10. So there you go. I think it, and so that being said, I think what Polian said isn't just what warrants a top 10 pick. You could argue that's for the whole first round. And it's huge. And so you look at the Raiders, right? And every mock draft you seem to see for the last 3 months, it's pointing to Ashton Genty. Some people are like, well, running back, first round. But then you got John Spytek, who says at the press conference, best player available. I don't care if it's a running back. If it's the best player, we will take a running back. I'm willing to. Well, there you go. A guy that can score touchdowns. It checks the box for Bill Polian and Tony Dungy. There you go.
Awesome. All right. I want to end our podcast because we're 2 more things I want to talk about. But the first one is you and I were riding around in the car in Indy, and you made a statement that I had heard the intellectual thought process voiced before, but I had never heard it the way you put it succinctly. And I shared it with a bunch of people, and I called it the France doctrine, and everybody laughed about it. But you talked about, you and I were talking, we were literally talking about this article and about understanding risk and all of it. And you said, so basically the best ceiling's a good floor. Michael, pure gold from you. I'm not going to take, that was all you, the France doctrine. Tell me about it. The best ceiling's a good floor.
Oh, it's a theory I've had for a while. Because, I mean, it's like, what is the chance this guy busts, and what is the worst case scenario for this prospect, right? Like, we always want to talk about this guy could be the next Peyton Manning. This guy has Patrick Mahomes talent. This guy has Josh Allen. Yeah, but on the other end of that, what's the worst case scenario? Is it Jared Goff or is it Ryan Leaf? Because I'll take the guy with the floor of Jared Goff as opposed to the guy with the floor of a Ryan Leaf, right? It's looking at, yeah, we all know what he could be. We know what the best case is. Best case, this guy's a Max Crosby of a pass rusher. What is the worst case? Is it 16 sacks a season is his best case, and his worst case is still only 10? Only 10? Because not bad, right? So what is not just what is the chance this guy is going to be a bust or not reach his potential, but what is that worst case he doesn't reach the potential? What does that look like? So for me, the best way I can describe it is last year's draft, there was a cornerback out of Michigan, Mikey Sanderstill, came out. And I did draft rankings for that position. I actually did a combined one. I didn't just do cornerbacks and safeties. I actually just did combined defensive backs, cornerbacks, and safeties. Even then, I probably had him ranked higher than most would have. And the reason why is I went back to, I just love the kid's floor, right? I mean, he came out of that incredible blue blood program where it was almost like the Lions with the grit and the toughness and the football IQ, true blue football guys, right? You have dinner with them, they're playing with the salt and pepper drawn up plays with you, right? They don't turn it off. When they're done for the day and they're about to go to bed, they're not just watching they're playing Madden. Like these guys are football, football, football. That kind of program. You looked at the Mikey Sanders still he had that quality. He was just around the play every time as a playmaker. He was tough. I loved his floor. And for me, I was like, I just like him. I have a good feeling about him. It's a gut feeling. And so that's where I came up but it was because of that floor that made me rate him so high. So and that's when I realized for myself, well, I guess the best ceiling is a good floor. I love that. Uh, what's the bustability rate of this player?
I love it.
And I think
love it.
that's all you need.
I love the France doctrine. Love it. I love it. That's a good name for it, though, isn't it? The France doctrine.
I love it.
All right. So
Very regal.
I'm going to end with this. We are days away, hours away from the NFL draft right now. And on this show, we have echoed for years that there has never been more bad drafting teams than there is right now. It is worse. I think your research proves it. And so with your deep dive, how do the Raiders win the draft? Continue to be BPA. Just stick with best player available is what my analysis is of what you wrote. I'll give you the final word.
I agree. If you're Pete Carroll, you're John Spytek, you want to win now. You have a proven quarterback. The most important piece, the biggest right now, it is currently the biggest predictor of success in the NFL, quarterback position. So you got that. You have pieces on defense, pieces on offense. You're still a few pieces away, but and as this proves, because one of the 14 playoff teams was the Denver Broncos, another one was the Washington Commanders. Any team at any given time can be one good draft away. Look at the 1974 Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, what, 4 Hall of Famers? That draft class put them over the top. It could be one draft class. You got to get it right. So the Raiders, you got quarterback. You got, Ashton Genty. You want to talk about floor? I see a player like Genty. And for me in my gut, I'm thinking, barring injury, he's about as good as it gets as a running back prospect and a day one impact player, right? And we've seen how good the top of the line rookie running backs can contribute right away.
Mm-hmm.
If you're the Raiders and considering the Bill Polian, Tony Dungy methodology, he fits into that as worthy of a top 10 pick. For the rest of it, it's staying true to best player available. Position need, but it's all about value and best available. And you can't be rigid to position need. That's a death sentence. That's how you you jump the gun. That's how you settle for prospects that are maybe lesser than what is available because, well, we need this position. No, best player available. Build a foundation for Geno Smith and whatever young quarterback they want to bring in, whether it's this draft or in future drafts, and just keep building the Raiders.
Tremendous work by Michael. If you go and look in the post part of the YouTube, you will find a link to the article that you can go read. It was an exceptional article. Michael, first of all, we're friends. So I'm proud of you as your friend. Most importantly, I'm proud of you as your boss. It was tremendous work and nobody held your hand. You did it. It's all you. And you deserve every bit of it. I am not afraid to give credit where credit's due. You know that. And you've earned every bit of my praise. Congratulations. Great piece of journalism. If you are a football fan and you want to learn and walk into that draft and feel like you are ready to be a GM, Michael's article is a must. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.